Bună ziua, sunt Claudia Tapardel și bine ați venit la prima ediție a emisiunii Din culisele Europei, All About EU. Din culisele Europei este o emisiune dedicată exclusiv tematicii europene, cu scopul de a genera o mai bună înțelegere de către publicul din România a tot ceea ce se întâmplă în Uniunea Europeană. Vom afla de aici, din studiourile DC News și pe viitor, chiar din Parlamentul European, cine sunt cei care decid la nivel european, care sunt sferele de influență, cum se iau deciziile la Bruxelles, de ce se iau aceste decizii și, mai mult decât atât, care este impactul acestor decizii și al legislației europene asupra vieții fiecărui român. Așa că vă invit să veniți alături de mine în fiecare miercuri de la ora 13 și oricând doriți să urmăriți această emisiune pe platforma DC News. And now I will start to speak in English because I want to present my guest. My guest is Mr. Serghei Stanishev, the president of PES, Party of European Socialists. Good afternoon, Mr. Stanishev, dear Serghei, and welcome to All About EU.
Good afternoon to you and to your audience in Romania. I wish you all the best in these uncertain times.
Thank you. We really need better moments. It's a great pleasure to have you today with us, and I want, first of all, to present you. Even you are already a very well-known public European figure in Romania because you visited Romania several times. So, as I said before, you are the president of PES, Party of European Socialists, since 2011. You are former Prime Minister of Bulgaria, our neighbor country, and also you are a member of the European Parliament, activating in two of the most important committees of the European Parliament, the Foreign Affairs, the first one, and the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee, the other. And now I will start directly with my questions because I want to use all the time that we have. So, we have at this moment, you have a huge political experience at European level and also governmental. So from your point of view, I want to ask you, what is your opinion about these times that we are living in? And the second question is, how can you can fight against this invisible enemy, I might say, COVID-19, which has hit in an unbelievable way all the world, not only the European Union, which has destroyed our normal lives, affected our health, and paralyzed our economies and our society in every single way. So how can the European Union can support the member states to overcome this situation?
Well, first of all, Claudia, let me say that indeed I have a special attitude towards Romania. First, because I'm Bulgarian, we are neighbors.
Exactly.
I've been to the country many times and I like the people. We are very like-minded in our mentality, in our habits, in our culture. And we're neighbors and we have to do many more things together. Because one way or another, we are perceived as a couple, you see.
Exactly.
And
we are forever partners.
Yes, and we came into the European Union together. We are perceived as one group, like the Visegrad group is one, Bulgaria and Romania is another group. So we really have to help each other as countries. I've been many times, as I already mentioned, to your country in different capacities. And of course, I've been to many events of the PSD, which is our sister party. And I've been at many congresses, election campaigns to support a more progressive, more social Romania. And I still believe that a lot of things should be done in this direction. And I, of course, support this party. I am partial. So speaking on coming to your question, it's a very broad one, of course, but first of all, we can only go through this crisis and come out of it if we are together. One by one, nobody will be saved. And this is why from the first day of this crisis, the socialist political family was very clear about the recipe, how to overcome it, how to help the countries and the people. Because people suffer in their daily life, in the insecurity about their jobs, worries about their health, of themselves and of their relatives, So we need a strong European response. And from day one, we are working for a European medical response and for a European economic response. And although, let's say, in the first weeks there was some slowdown in the European reaction, and it was natural because, after all, the sanitary measures, the lockdowns, they were taken as decisions by national governments because they know the situation on the ground best, and they take the measures and they decide what is better for their concrete circumstances. But very rapidly, also the European Commission and the European institutions generally took a number of measures from the first weeks. About 37 billion euro were released to the member states to help the governments tackle the immediate needs, to support the healthcare systems, to pay more to the medical workers, to the doctors and nurses, to help the companies which didn't have a way to work, to produce, to sell. And this was just the first step. All together with this, what we were working very actively upon was a more comprehensive and general economic plan for recovery. And if we look retrospectively, one can hardly imagine how many things changed in the economic policy of the European Union. Many of the old, ultra-liberal and conservative mantras were abandoned or at least put aside for the moment. Because when you have a crisis like this, which hits every country, which hits every sector, then you need a reply from a European level which is compensating these strikes on the economy and the businesses and the people, of course. This is why I'm very happy that after many months of serious and tough negotiations, the European Council accepted, and we have a very serious input as a family into this, the European Recovery Plan.
Yes, because this is my second question about the European Recovery Plan.
This is the important thing which has been done. Apart from many other novelties, I will tell you. First, these macroeconomic rules which were making every country to have not more than 3% of budgetary deficit. It cannot work under such circumstances.
Of course, it's impossible in such
when the state has to support
huge economic crisis. Yes.
So they were put aside. For the first time, the European Union is launching common debt de facto. You may call it whatever you like, but in reality, this is a common solidarity which will be distributed to all the countries. And through this plan, Romania in the next years, starting from this summer, I hope, will receive 30 billion euro approximately for reconstruction of the economy, for infrastructure, for the healthcare system, for everything what can modernize your economy, which is a big victory for Europe, and which shows that Europe can be useful and instrumental to our citizens, which is the most important thing. We need this union because it can be a tool for a better life, and especially now.
I agree with you. I really agree with you, but let me ask you something. I have two questions. One is related to the European Parliament, and the second one is related to the member states, but especially to Bulgaria and Romania. The first one, yes, this is the most important financial instrument to support the member states, the RRF. But I want to know exactly what it will be the role of the European Parliament in implementing and monitoring the national plans of resilience and recovery, because I was a former MEP, and I want to be sure that the European Parliament has a role in this issue, not only the European Commission. And the second question, I want to know how is the situation in Bulgaria. If the Bulgarian government have already elaborated this national plan, it has already been sent to Brussels, it was accepted by the European Commission. I want to know which are the Bulgarian government priorities settled by this plan, and I will tell you why I want to ask you this, because at this moment it seems that Romania still has some problems in elaborating this plan in order to be approved by Brussels. So that's why I want to know how is the situation in Bulgaria, and maybe we can obtain from your part some examples of good practices or some good suggestions. You have a huge experience.
First of all, the European Parliament will have a say in the process and in the monitoring of the implementation of this plan, of the national plans. There will be a special, it is now in the process of constructing a special subcommittee where all factions will be represented, and it will monitor exactly this process, how this money are used. Do they correspond with the European priorities? Because the RFF and the Next Generation EU tools, there are European priorities and there are clear directions in which sectors it is more preferable to make the investments. Because, for example, 30% of all the spending should be for a greener economy, for low carbon economy. Exactly. And actually the idea of this plan is not just to reconstruct the economies the way they used to be before the COVID crisis, but really to use the money to modernize, to make our economies more competitive in the rapidly changing world, taking into consideration the needs to protect nature and create conditions for a better life for our citizens, because the pollution of air is a problem in every big city, I believe, be it in Bucharest, Sofia, Brussels, or wherever. And we have to leave a heritage to our children and grandchildren so they could live on this planet. But at the same time, of course, there are many new tendencies which we see. We see that digitalization is broadening, and also the COVID crisis make it both broader and deeper. It goes in every sector of our life. So the point is that these plans have to be very smartly elaborated in order to make for the future your economy stronger and more competitive in the new realities, which change so rapidly. So it should not be retroactive, returning you backwards, but moving you, giving you direction for your economies forwards. As to the national plans, it is a process. Every country has presented already its first, or some countries even the second draft of their national plans, because it's a process of dialogue, as it is with the regular European budget, and you are aware of it.
Exactly. Yes.
The country proposes its structure of the recovery plan, then the Commission replies, has comments, there is a discussion, then the second plan is coming. Then the idea is, by the end of April, to have the plans of the member states approved by the Commission.
But the time is ticking. We only have 1 month for this.
This is why, I mean, speaking of the Bulgarian experience, I don't have too many good news, I would say.
Okay.
And I have my concerns that it may be very similar in Romania.
Exactly, yes.
From the spring of last year, in my capacity both of the PES president and member of the European Parliament, I was appealing through the media to the institutions, to the political players and all stakeholders to have a kind of, national round table discussion on this national recovery plan. Because it is not the plan of one particular government. It will be implemented through years. And if you take into addition also the tools of the European budget for every country, then it's for the next 7 years. And it will not be one, maybe 2 governments at least, or maybe if the political situation changes, even more governments. So it cannot be just a governmental plan. It should be a national plan. And everybody, the employers, the trade unions, the parties in government, the parties in opposition should be involved. And the best thing would be is to have really a broad discussion, a public discussion with different ideas put on the table, and then on that basis, also through a dialogue with the European institutions, to approve it through a parliament. And to my knowledge, our sister party, PSD, is insisting exactly on this. Because if you want this plan not to be a bureaucratic one,
yes,
and we know how ministries work, I mean, they have their capacity, but they are inevitably a bit bureaucratic. And you need more imagination. You need to listen to the business community. You need
Exactly.
to listen to
It's
trade
necessary
unions.
to have a large dialogue with all the stakeholders and with all the partners involved in the national economies.
Exactly. You need broad involvement if you want this plan to really work and help your economy. Otherwise, you may absorb the money in the end. But what will be the effect?
Hopefully, we hope that we'll absorb it.
Well, this is another matter, but I've seen in my country, even when you absorb the money, they may improve the infrastructure and many other things, but the point is to change the quality. Both of our countries need a faster development to catch up, because we are on the bottom list, and from the point of view of the incomes of the people, the strength of the economy, and we need to change it. This is the idea about the European solidarity which is given to us. So you need to really use all the intellectual capacity and expertise in your country in order to make a change so people could feel it and be more secure about their life, have higher incomes, have jobs which are of better quality for them, and really have good life.
Yes, let me address you another question which is really related with what you mentioned before. Of course that all the economies are affected by this crisis, and there is a lot of chaos and unknown in every member state. But in Romania, at this moment, we have many companies that went bankrupt. We lost a lot of jobs. The level of public debt is huge. The level of inflation has an increasing trend. The prices are rising every single day. But do you think that at this moment, with the time and we are facing, with this pandemic and economic crisis, with the people that are feeling every day this danger, the austerity is the solution, like freezing or cutting the wages, pension, or other social rights? Do you think that?
Definitely not.
No.
And again,
I am asking you this question because it seems that this is the trend that is taken at the level of the Romanian government, and I'm really afraid about this situation.
That is the direction. It's very unfortunate because it goes not in convergence, in divergence with the new European policies. As I mentioned already, the budgetary restrictions, which are part of the Stability and Growth Pact, they are postponed for this year and for next year as well. Because when you have a natural, inevitable shrinking of the economy and so many jobs at risk, you cannot abandon people. You have to help the companies and the people. And by the way, the European Union, as you are aware, also by the initiative of the Socialists, our Commissioner Nicola Schmid adopted a special system of additional insurance for unemployment, sure. And every country has access, every country which wishes, has access to this money, to these funds, in order to support people who are temporarily losing their jobs. Not just from the national funds, as it was and it is until now, but also from European money. And this is one element. The other element, again, when you have such a crisis, both of production and consumption, you need to compensate through public investment, which needs, under these circumstances, more budgetary spending. And if you look at every European, at least West European states, they go into bigger budgetary deficits in order to let the economy survive. Because if you keep, a zero budgetary deficit and you kill your companies and people lose your jobs, then after the COVID is over, who will be producing and who will be working? And what will be?
So the problem is that at this moment people don't have jobs and don't have money to survive. This is the problem. And the prices are rising every day. So in this moment, the people are not having really the money to pay for the medicines, for the products, for the food. So this is the real situation that we are facing. So you can't freeze the pensions or to cancel some social rights.
Yes, unfortunately, in some countries this is the reality, but I can tell you, looking at, having a view of most of the countries, This is not the common tendency. The common tendency is to help people. And we socialists are pushing for this in every country and also at the European level.
Also,
now we are moving towards the stage with of really reconstructing and ensuring social Europe. Because if Europe doesn't care about people when they need, then people will ask the question, what do we need it for? Because it's today that people are losing their jobs. Today they don't have enough money. Today they don't have access to health care. And they need to have a helping hand from the public authorities, both at a European and a national level. And if the government is not doing it, it's not doing its job.
And also we have another problem at the local level. We are facing this situation with the local communities that are administrated by socialist mayors and by socialist local governments. And I speak about counties, about cities, about villages. They didn't receive financial support from the liberal government because they are administrated by socialists. And I think this is not fair, and mostly in this moment that we are living, how is possible when, let's say, the basic strategy should be the solidarity to affect not the mayor, not the socialist local government, but you are affecting, in fact, the communities, the people that are living in that communities by having this kind of attitude. So what's your opinion? You are the president of PES, and I think we need a strongly message from your part.
Look, first of all, if this is the case, this is completely unacceptable. Not a single government can afford it in the European Union, because all municipal mayors, councillors, they are elected by the people, by the citizens, and there shouldn't be, a party approach. It's completely anti-European, and I would advise, and I'll speak with the delegation of the Romanian Social Democrats in the European Parliament, if this is the case and there are enough cases as a tendency, it should be raised also in the Parliament, in the debates here, because this is not what the European Union is expecting. Every citizen, be it living in a municipality led by a center-right mayor or center-left mayor, should have the equal rights. And I know that in our countries, especially, political life is very sharp, I would say.
Yes.
And there is a temptation probably for the government, okay, we shall be supporting our mayors to show how good they are, but people should not be punished. And there should be, and there will be a political reaction from our family on this issue.
Yes, and the last question about Romania and about the things that are happening in Romania. There is a discussion at the level of the political majority of the parliament to change the national ombudsman. You know, also every country has also a national ombudsman. But at this moment, our national ombudsman, it is in her legal mandate. It's a former member of the European Parliament, and still she has some years, I think 3 or 4 years, until the terms ends legally. So, what's your opinion about this subject? Because we have a legislation, we have the constitution, and we can't change the national ombudsman whenever we want or whenever we change the majority in the parliament.
Well, again, if this is the case, this is again completely unacceptable. Because there are, the European Union is a union based on rule of law. You have your laws, you have a clear mandate, and any ideas to change the ombudsman just for political, reasons, it's not acceptable. That's it. There should be a reaction.
Yes. I want to come back now to the, let's say, European issues, but also to the most important and hot topic that we are having in this moment, and this is the state of play of the vaccination campaign at the level of the EU. And I want to speak about a subject that is very important for every citizen. The President of the European Commission, Ms. von der Leyen, offered us some information and some figures about the situation of vaccination at the European level, the number of vaccines, import, exports. But in your opinion, do you think that it's possible to have a vaccination and the immunization of the European population until the 1st of September, as it was discussed? And the second question, do you think that it will be necessary also to take into consideration the import of the Russian vaccine or the Chinese vaccine, because we see that situation in Hungary? Also, I understand there are some discussion in Austria, in Germany, about also using vaccines from outside Europe. What's your opinion about this?
Well, first of all, let me say a few general remarks. I'm a strong supporter of a common European approach towards the vaccination process. I mean, the whole process of negotiating and buying the vaccine through a centralized procedure in a way, through the European Commission. Why? Because if there would be, individual policy and countries would be running for the vaccines one by one, then first of all, for sure, the price would be much higher for every individual country. Secondly, there would be a big inequality between countries because there are richer countries which can afford to pay a higher price and some countries for which it would be more difficult to spare the same money for a higher price. So this approach, which was selected by the European Union and by the member states, is the right one. And it was right also to invest in advance, as we did, into the productive capacity of the companies, etc. Also, I think it is right not to cut corners. Because yes, for example, in Britain, they started the vaccination earlier. But EMA, the European Medical Agency, and this was the approach of the governments, only was giving permission to vaccines which have been seriously tested and checked afterwards. And I think we cannot play games or make adventures at the expense of the health of the people and putting them at risk. We are seeing that with some vaccines, even after very thorough checks, there are some problems and side effects and questions. And many countries, for example, stopped temporarily the AstraZeneca use, then some of them already restarted it. But indeed, what should be the central point is not to make more harm to the people. They suffer enough from COVID itself, not to put them at unnecessary risks. And the same goes about the other vaccines. I know that now the Russian vaccine has applied finally, because there were months and months saying why the European Union is not letting the Russian vaccine, but there was not an application form. I think we should be pragmatic. And if the EMA says that it is safe, then there should be no problem also to buy through the European mechanisms also a Russian vaccine on the national governments. But we have to be sure that the safety comes first. Speaking of the timing, I mean, there are several types of problems. One is the production capacity, because many of the companies simply were not ready. Nobody was ready, frankly speaking. Now all these companies which are producing vaccines have to produce in comparison to 2019, because they are producing vaccines for different diseases. I mean, for decades, most of them. So the quantity which is demanded by not only the European but of the whole world for those companies who have vaccines which are effective is not tenfold, not maybe 30-fold more than they were producing. And they don't have simply the capacity. So from this point of view, there are problems, and the European Union should encourage and help increase the capacity within the European Union. Also, what we read and hear is that some companies are withholding already produced vaccines, which is completely unacceptable, and there should be, there are contracts. They have signed contracts with the European Union. If they don't fulfill them, there should be sanctions for this. This is my approach, because the most important thing is really to put COVID under control in order to start the recovery, because without putting COVID under control, the recovery will be very shaky, even with all the funds which have been provided by the European Union and also by the national governments. Because if you start doing something, then another wave is coming.
So we can put COVID under control until 1st of September, or let's say the beginning of autumn, because this was the expectation. This was a kind of promise that the European Commission made to the European citizens.
Indeed, it is going slower than it was expected, and this is the serious risk. We had in our group a conversation, very serious and critical one, with Ursula von der Leyen some time ago. She committed herself in front of us that we are expecting about 30 million vaccines in major companies this month, and about 35 next month, but there is more demand. And we really have to push and work to achieve more, because again, to put COVID under control, you need a massive vaccination.
And also I want to ask you about the coordination between the European institutions and the member states regarding this issue. Do you feel that this coordination is a good one, it's efficient?
Well, it can always be better, frankly speaking, because this is a new experience. But also, look, recently there was a debate and démarche by several member states, including, I don't remember if Romania is there, but Austria and Bulgaria are there, asking for a new way of distribution of the vaccines. It was discussed yesterday at the Council, but also the Commission replied, okay, it's you, the member states, which decided what will be the way of distribution, because very often when we say Brussels, we should keep in mind that it's the member states which make the most important decisions. It's the prime ministers who meet in the European Council, or at the lower level, it's the ministers who meet in different councils like EPSCO on social affairs, or others on the healthcare ministers, and they decide actually together. It's not the bureaucracy in Brussels which makes the decision. But there should be improvement, and the European Parliament, of course, is strongly committed and is monitoring this process and is asking questions to the Commission, which is our authority. But also in Romania, it's the Parliament which should ask the questions to the government, especially, say, the opposition.
Exactly. The opposition is putting these questions, but me as a journalist, I want to know how is the situation, how is the real situation in Europe, because the expectation that I have as journalist, as citizens, and of course as former MEP, is to be sure that the European institutions are really taking the correct measures and are managing this COVID-19 crisis in a responsible way. And that there is a perspective that maybe in autumn or maybe at the end of the year, we can come back to our normal lives. We can come back to our jobs. The children can come back to schools, because in Romania, again, the children are not going to school anymore, for example.
Well, I can tell, I'm hopeful, but we have to be realists as well. The initial target to have by July, I think it was, to have 70% of the population vaccinated is not a realistic one anymore. But we have to double the efforts in order still to have as many people vaccinated as possible for their safety, and to be able in September, October, where there could be, because there are seasonal fluctuations of this virus. Apparently, taking into account the experience from last year, in summer, the wave was off.
I want to ask you something regarding the summer season.
In the autumn it came back. So we have to prepare for the autumn and continue this process in order to put it under control.
But also I want to ask you about the summer season and the recovering of the touristic sector.
Yeah.
It was launched by the European Commission, the legislative proposal regarding the green digital vaccine, the green digital certificate for vaccination. I know that a few days ago it was also activated at the level of the Parliament, the emergency procedure, the Article 163. So, do you think that this green digital certificate for vaccination can be implemented starting with the 1st of June? Can reach all the political agreement at EU level and be implemented at the level of the member states starting with 1st of June in order to save this touristic summer season? And also to offer us the possibility to travel again. I really want to go to come to Brussels.
I can, not only to Brussels, come to Bulgaria.
Exactly.
I would like to come to Romania as well.
Exactly.
And work and whatever. But look, first of all, indeed, now restrictions are toughening again in many countries. Not only in Romania, as you mentioned, but for example, in Belgium, where I'm now, also now the schools, for the first time since last summer, the schools have been closed earlier for the holidays of the children. And this is something new, which shows that also here there are many problems. And again, the vaccination is not going fast enough. For example, in Belgium, I think out of 11 million people, there is 1 million people vaccinated. So in many countries, there are problems and obstacles. There are no unproblematic countries. But the citizens should be also very much demanding towards the government, because in many cases, we see the difference in the speed of vaccination in different countries. This is already a matter of organization of the governments. And if it's not going fast enough, it's the governments to be blamed and to respond to people and to take actions to improve things. Now coming to your question, what will depend on the European Parliament, I think, will be done in order to speed up the process. Because very rapidly, after the proposal of the Commission, the European Parliament replied and voted this emergency fast procedure. So on the side of the European institutions, there will be no obstacles, on the contrary. One thing to keep in mind, I think this is a good balanced proposal. I had many concerns at the beginning, because one thing should be avoided. People should not be discriminated. Because I asked directly the President of the Commission the question about before they announced this idea about the green digital certificates, do you work on this and how do you see it? And she said, yes, we're working, but indeed it can be implemented only when the vaccine is accessible to every citizen. Because otherwise, if you create an easy way to travel for people who have been vaccinated and other people who want to be vaccinated, but they can't because it's not their turn to go to be vaccinated, then this would be unfair. This is why I think the Commission took into account this risk, and this certificate will include not only information if you are vaccinated or not, but also information if you have already had this disease, so which means that you have antibodies, at least for a certain period of time, or also information about the PCR test, because this thing should not, discriminate. So people would be able to travel. I hope that also by this tool and by the other things which are happening, also with the natural development of the disease, I would say, for the summer it will be easier to travel, and the touristic season will be better in your country, in my country, in many countries as well. But it will, let's also be again realistic, it will not happen like a miracle, no, in one click. We will not go back to normality as soon as we all wish. But it's important to go through these waters, yes, and to survive.
But it's important to give also a perspective to all the people that are working in this sector and all the companies that are providing services in this sector. And also it's another part of the culture part, the entertainment industry, which is still not having any kind of activity. And also the airline companies are very affected, so there are a lot of sectors of activity that are affected by not finding a solution how to travel again and how to use our freedom of travel. But because we don't have so much time, I want to ask you something, because you are the president of European Socialist, and I know that the conference on the future on Europe, it will be launched on May 9, on the Europe Day. And I want to ask you, which are the main elements of this strategic document? And the second question, what is your political point of view and vision as president of European Socialists regarding the future of Europe, given all the challenges and threats that the Europe has faced in the last, let's say, 10 years? I speak about the terrorist attacks, I speak about the Brexit, I speak about the discussion about a two-speed Europe, which is also affecting many of the member states, this discussion, also Romania and Bulgaria. And now we have the pandemic and economic crisis. So what's your vision about the future of Europe and this conference on the future of Europe?
Well, for me, it's important, first of all, to listen to people. Because this conference can be a success only if the broad public opinion in the member states reflect and participate in this debate and help us together shape up the vision. What kind of Europe do we want to see in the future, and what kind of instruments for Europe we need to provide in order to achieve these results. So first of all, it has to go out of the bubble. This is why, at least for our socialist family, we should do our best to really involve as much as possible the civil society. The national parliaments should be strongly involved. Different stakeholders and the people should participate, especially young people.
Tell me three important elements regarding the future of Europe, because it's a lot of uncertainty, and we want to know what will happen, which is the vision of the European leaders.
But
we have great expectations, I know.
I think we should start from the other end, because we should avoid the mistakes which were made in early years of this century, when the convention was formed, which adopted a project for a European constitution. But because it was only, elitist exercise of politicians who gather somewhere and produce a project about the future with many institutional elements, it didn't come to the heart of people. We should reverse the exercise and start to asking, okay, what do you want from Europe? Do you want more Europe on, let's say...
What do you want, Serghei, from Europe?
What?
Mr. Stanishev, dear Serghei, what do you want from Europe?
Well, Europe is a successful common market. I want more social Europe, because at the moment, especially after the austerity policy which was imposed after 2009 on all our countries by the center-right majority in the institutions at the European level, there is not enough social Europe. This is why for many years we were pressing to have finally a social summit. And the first social summit after the beginning of the previous crisis was in Gothenburg in Sweden. It was initiated by the Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven. There was a proclamation about the social rights in Europe of every citizen, Romanian citizen including, which we have to enjoy. And now we are moving to the next stage, the stage of the action plan. Early March, the European Commission,
launched the social
with the initiative of our commissioners, launched an action plan on the implementation of the social pillar. And now we shall have a summit in Porto in early May, and immediately after this a European Council, which will have to make practical steps forward in order to make this dream a reality, because we want Europe not to be good for the companies.
Can you answer me with yes or no? Do you think that these objectives that are mentioned in the action plan of the social pillar can be reached until 2013? Because this is the objective, that all that social elements and social objectives, which are very ambitious, to be reached by 2030, and also the European citizen to benefit from these social rights.
Well, our political family will have all the pressure that we can execute, that all the governments to meet for the implementation. And it remains not just a paper of good intentions, but there are concrete mechanisms which request the governments to follow these policies on regular retraining the labor force, of the standards of the minimum wage in Europe, because you know that in a number of countries it's much, much lower. So we need a common European mechanism on this, and many other elements which are social. Just recently we also proposed, and we proposed much earlier, but now it's a reality, a child guarantee, which are now funded by the European Union. So we reduce by 15 million people, by 15 million children, the number of children who don't have access to health care, who don't have healthy food daily.
This is a wonderful project, yes.
These are the concrete things which touch every European, because look, our citizens will be pro-European only if they see that Europe makes their life better and that Europe cares about them. This is the socialist vision about the future of Europe, I would say.
Yes, I agree with you. Dear Serghei, Mr. Stanishev, I want to ask you now, because I already mentioned a few times in this talk show that we are facing very difficult times, and it's clear for everybody. And I think the most important word should be solidarity. So I want from your part to share with us, with the Romanian public, with the Bulgarian one, and also with all the citizens, because the talk show, it will be broadcasted online, to share a message of solidarity, of support, of hope, because we really need this at this moment. And as I told you, maybe we have small or great expectation from EU level, but we have some expectation from EU level and from the European institutions.
Well, you justly have expectations, because this is the job of the institutions to deliver. And what can I tell people this moment in Romania? Look, it's difficult for everybody. I mean, for people who suffered this illness. I mean, I have friends who went through this, and they say that this is not the usual flu. This infection is very, very severe, and it attacks you in many ways. For people who lost their close people, relatives, it's even harsher, because nothing can repair such a loss. And also to the people who now for 1 year already live in uncertainty. I can tell that at least on the social democratic side of the political spectrum, we are doing, and we shall continue to do everything what we can, that nobody is left behind. This is the most important thing. That people see that Europe cares, and many steps were made. I'm very proud, actually, that we achieved so much. It was unthinkable 1 year ago to think about revision of the Stability and Growth Pact and much more spending from the government. The right wing wouldn't let it happen under normal circumstances. It was unthinkable for many countries to have a common European debt issued, guaranteed by all of us, in order to help every country and every industry in the European Union. And step by step, we shall be working to make Europe even a better place to live. But indeed, we need to stay together, because otherwise, one by one, we shall all drown, be it in our societies, be it as countries.
I totally agree with you, and now we are at the end line, and I want to thank you for this interview, for this debate. I think it was very useful for our public. And I hope that I will see you soon in Brussels and we'll have a longer debate. And we'll also benefit from the right of freedom of movement very soon.
Hopefully. Thank you very much for this interview. I hope, I would say, that people could feel that I speak very openly and frankly and the way I see it. Because I believe that people deserve honesty towards them and not creating new illusions or populist lies or playing on their fears. We have to be frank and decent in our attitude to say what is possible, what is not possible, what are the obstacles in achieving more when we face them. This is how I see politics, but it has to be to deliver. This is the most important thing. Otherwise, for many good reasons, people just hate politicians.
I hope that in the future the politicians will be more appreciated about the public, but the politicians that are really doing important things for their citizens and which really have project for their citizens and that understand that social protection is very important. Thank you so much.
Very much.
All the best and hope to see you in Brussels or in Romania.
Hopefully. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Vă mulțumesc. Aceasta a fost prima ediție a emisiunii All About EU din culisele Europei. Vom veni cu interviuri și mai interesante în săptămânile următoare. Vă invit să mă urmăriți în fiecare miercuri, începând cu ora 13 și sper să fiți îngăduitori cu emoțiile din această emisiune, având în vedere că a fost prima ediție. Toate cele bune!